This is Ken Spangenberg. I have a very special guest here today. We got Kevin Wilson, KW Baseball. How's it going, Kevin?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, Ken.
No problem. Like we were just talking about, this is a new normal, right? Just Zoom
Absolutely.
meetings all day.
Absolutely.
So I know you've been on a bunch of these. I've not done a bunch of them, but I've listened to a lot of them, and I feel like they always start off with like a playing career and a background. We're gonna skip that right now. We'll circle back to it in a little bit. So one of my favorite quotes from you that I think, regardless if you're a player listening, if you're a parent, if you're a coach, it really is going to be helpful. Hitting is simple. It's just not easy. Can you kind of give people the background on that quote? How do you think it can be useful to the people that are listening in?
Yeah, I think it's a life quote. It's a hitting quote. It's a leadership quote. I really just, again, trying to use baseball as a platform to teach, like we all do. You do, and a lot of us do. And for me, hitting is simple. It's just not that easy. Is trying to understand and simplify things, because I think if we simplify things, then we have an opportunity to really get down to the bottom of why things happen. And hitting is simple. And when I say hitting is simple, it's, my 10-year-old can toss a ball up and hit it. He can hit a ball off the tee. A big leaguer can do that. It's pretty simple to do that. We're going to probably succeed if a ball's sitting on the tee more than not. And that's the simple part about that. Another part of it, as you get older, with the hitting, it's simple. Is, hey, listen, I know what pitch I hit well. I know where on the plate that I hit that pitch well. But the not easy part to that is the dude's out there trying to push pull me, and he's trying to sink it and cut it, run it, and he's changing speeds, and that's not the easy part of it. So I think today, the saying itself is so much more useful and helpful, I feel like, today, because hitters are drowning in information today, but they're starving for wisdom. And I think that if there's so much information out there, like you and I have talked about in the past, and I know you talk about, there's so much information and guys don't know what to pick out of that. And so what hitting is simple, it's just not that easy, is, listen, you're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. Where is that wisdom? The wisdom comes from what are your strengths? What pitch do you hit the best? Where on the plate do you like to have the ball, and where do you drive it the best? Things like that. That's wisdom from experience, because if you try to swing at fastballs and you swing and miss or you crush them all, then you realize really quick what you can and can't hit there. Same thing with breaking ball, same thing with changeup. Then where are they on the plate? Can you hit them? Can you not hit them? All that allows us to have wisdom. And when I tell hitters hitting is simple, it's just not that easy, is like, listen, you got to go up there with a plan, got to go up there with an approach. You got to understand why you're doing what you're doing. You understand not just what, but why, and then stick to it. And if you go up there with that approach, it's a pretty simple approach. I want to hit a fastball on the outer third of the plate, as an example. And again, the not easy part is that guy is trying to eat lunch out there too, and he's trying to get you out. So in essence, trying to expand on that, that's basically what I'm trying to help guys with, is just sift through that, the clutter, and find some clarity with what they do and why they do what they do.
Yeah, for sure. And I like we were talking about before we got recording, the amount of information out there it's so immense. I mean, never in the world has it been this easy to find out information, and that can be really useful, and that can be dangerous too. So for these guys out there that are listening in, what would your advice be to, using social media, using books and podcasts to help develop like your routine as a hitter, your mindset? Do you have any tips?
Ooh, we could go so many different ways, Ken.
Yeah,
I think but try to dwindle it down and give some, maybe some advice for those who are watching and listening. I think number one, the toughest part of this, I think, Ken, is trying to figure out, what do you need at this moment in your career? Are you a high school player? Are you a college player? Are you a little league player? Are you a pro? And I think what I try to do, at least as a coach, I try to meet them where they're at, and I try to build out from there. So if you're looking for information, try to figure out like the one thing that you really need right now. Is the one thing that you need is a mental approach at the plate, trying to figure out kind of a good approach. Do you need help with your daily routine? Do you have a routine? Do you want to get it better? Do you want to figure out where to start with that? Do you need work with your swing? Do you need some mechanic help? Do you need I think by figuring out kind of the one thing that you need in this moment, in this time, allows you to kind of filter down to kind of where you can start looking for stuff. Again, there's a lot of things that are really good out there, and there's also a lot of stuff that we both, and I think we all see that could be detrimental, or maybe it's not for us. But I always go back to, like, listen, just like me as a hitting coach, I'm not for everybody, but I am for somebody. So I think as you're going through, there's a couple things that I kind of signpost that I have, that people that I like to listen to and people that I really respect. Number one, there's people that I want to learn from, the people who've been there and done that. And it doesn't mean that you have to play in the big leagues for 20 years. I never played in the big leagues, but I'm very fortunate for a while now to be able to work with big leaguers. Um, I think it's finding out people that have been there and done that. People, this is another thing for me, it may not be for everybody, but I just want to know if they really care about me as a person, as a player, as a coach, and they're not trying to sell me something. They're trying to have a good conversation. We always talk about Ken hitting as a conversation. If they're looking to have a conversation about hitting, I tend to gravitate towards those people and try to learn and pick out things from them. And I guess the last thing is we're trying to sift through and trying to figure out who we want to be associated with and who we want to try to learn from. I mean, really, it's tough. It's not easy, but just the stuff out there is if it sounds too complicated, then it's probably not the way that you want to go. On the flip side, if it sounds too simple, don't discard it right away. I think some people think that, well, if it's too simple, if he just said, hey, hit this fastball at the middle, and everything else out there is saying you got to work on your whatever it is, your vectors, your victors, your all these other things, and go through like a 17-step process, then I want to know the guy that has been there and done that and has a very simple mindset and purpose to what they're doing. And it's the less is more, and the simple doesn't mean that it's less. People that know and understand what they're talking about through experience are going to keep it very simple, and they're going to individualize their teaching to you. So as you're looking out there, I know it's a long-winded answer to your question, and hopefully I'm answering some of the question, but I think it's a very important topic to what we see out there, is that you guys are seeing so much out there. Try to pick out what you need in this time and start going to the people that have been there and done that and have a track record. And they also care about you, and you can tell in their tone and their messaging, and they keep things very simple. So I'll start off with that, Ken, and hopefully it kind of helps to answer the question a little bit at least.
No, for sure. I think that's a great start. I think one of the problems with maybe the overcomplication is because we have all this data, we might like know a little bit more than we used to. And in like a classroom setting, that could be beneficial. Like I think we've both had plans going into like a practice or going into a hitting session, similar to people like putting together that data and coming up with a plan or their idea of it. But then when you actually put it into practice, that complicated plan gets thrown out the window pretty quick. And I think that's where experience comes into play, because guys who have been there and have seen 95 and seen a guy that can throw 3 pitches for strikes in any count understand that you can't be thinking of 7 different things at once. Like that's just not a strategy that's going to win in the long run. So I think that there's definitely a place for it, and I think that's really good advice for these guys. So you mentioned being, coaching some big leaguers. We jumped right into it, so I'd like to backtrack a little bit. You want to tell these guys, how you got into what you're doing now, and what brought you there?
We don't have enough time, I don't think, to because there's a lot of factors to it. There's a lot of factors to it. I'll try to get to the main points, and me, Ken. They're like Cervantes said, the journey is better than the end. I think that as we're on our playing journey, our coaching journey, our parenting journey, whoever's watching this, we're all on a journey of some sort, and we all started somewhere, and we're all where we're at right now. And there's probably for a lot of us, a goal that we want to get to, or a North Star, or wherever it is that we're trying to go in that direction. I mean, for me, when I got done playing, there was a couple things for me. I was like, you know what? I know as a hitter, I was a switch hitter. I played middle infield, and I was like bipolar in a sense, baseball wise. Two different swings, two different mindsets, and who knows going to the park what I was going to come to the park with, because I never had both swings the same. But when I left the game, I was like, you know what? I had some really good coaches. I had some really bad coaches. I had some coaches that were right in the middle, and that's all of us. We all can pick that out. And I said, you know what? If I had to do this all over again, what kind of coach would I want to help me? Because I was saying, okay, I like what this guy did. I didn't like what this guy did. And this guy, like, if you did a little bit more of this, or a little bit less than that, then he would be that. And I boiled it down to three things, Ken. I said, I want a coach that is a hybrid coach, that one guy can do it all. And I said, I wanted a guy that can talk about my swing, my mechanics 1 minute, can talk about my approach the next minute, and then talk about life the minute after that, or the night after the game, or whatever it is. So whenever I came to the ballpark, because I mean, guys come to the ballpark every day. We don't know what they've experienced off the field the night before, the morning of, during the day. And so, like, sometimes you're coming with a bad head. Something happened at home, you got in a fight with girlfriend or parents or whatever. I wanted somebody to come in and say, okay, I'm not going to talk to you about your swing right now because you're just in a bad mood. We're going to skip the swing, the approach, and we're going to go right to the life thing. What's on your mind, man? I'm here if you need anything. Want to take a walk? Something like that. So when I started coaching, I said, I want to be all that. The next part of that, as at the time I was doing lessons in the academy, and that's when I was playing, and then right after I was playing, and I was doing that. And that was such a great ground for me to learn how to teach. Because I always say, if you don't know how to teach an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, there's no shot being able to teach a big leaguer. Because there's a lot of things that all age groups will teach you as a coach. But for me, it's like I had to go through a lot of trial and error. I had to learn how to be a good listener. I had to learn how to be to be confident in what I was suggesting to them. I had to be flexible. If that didn't work, boom, go right to the next thing and try that and all that. So as I was doing that, and some of my teammates were like, hey, can you help me in the off season? When I just got done playing, I was like, all right. And then I realized I had a gift. I didn't really know what the gift was, but guys were just like, man, thank you so much, man. I just feel so much better. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know why they felt better. I was just trying to help, like most all coaches out there are trying to do. Fast forward all through the years, as I was doing lessons, more and more pro guys kept coming to me. I'm like, oh, well, again, here is where I want to be at. I want to help everybody, but also I want to be able to help the guys that are going through the toughest moments. You know that with your brother. I mean, you get to the top, there's just so much stuff going on up there, right? That most people don't even know about. So you're dealing and you're going through the weeds every single day, just trying to find your space in your lane and just trying to find some good spots every day. And it doesn't happen all the time. So as it was going along, I said, more and more pro guys kept coming to me, and they were coming to me for their swing, Ken. But then it ended up being the mental side, which is the most important. Anybody can swing a bat. The mental side, and then the mentorship, the life coach, the taking walks, what I love to do with players, the text messages, hey, I'm having difficulty off the field doing this. And so it started to become like, okay, these guys also need what I needed. I wasn't the only one. So the light bulb went off, and then that's how we end up here. And what we're doing right now is continue to pour into them and plant seeds and really help them off the field. Because if they're not good off the field, as you know, Ken, they're not going to be good on the field. So 10% of what I do is the hitting part. 90% is the life and mentorship part, and being there for them, walk alongside them. And if they're good off the field, that 90% player automatically shows up on the field.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, baseball is a tough enough sport to play if you're stressed about something not happening on the field. So what advice would you give to the people that are listening as they're walking into the park, they had a rough day off the field? What are some things that you'd recommend for them to kind of get their mind right so they're ready to perform and compete?
The biggest thing for me that I found, and I needed this too, and I think a lot of people can relate, is I needed perspective. I think sometimes, whether we're young, see, I grew up in a different era than the kids growing up now, in terms of we didn't have showcase baseball. We didn't have the Carpenter Cup at the vet was like
Right.
That was the showcase where all the colleges came to the vet. And it was for the Carpenter Cup. And the Carpenter Cup was a huge deal back then. I know they still do it, but it's a different type of format.
Hmm.
Um, but I didn't have any perspective, especially when I got in the pro ball, was I had no perspective because I was so in this bubble. And the bubble doesn't have to be professional baseball. The bubble could be high school baseball. The bubble could be your 11U travel team. I think sometimes our identity falls into who we are, and our identity is only wrapped up in a baseball player. That certainly was mine. I'll raise my hand. I got into some bad trouble in some dark places because if I went 4 for 4 at the plate and I hit the walk-off homer, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Baseball player in the paper the next day. We didn't have social media, so you had to wait for the next day for the article to come out showing my age. But that's where um, my identity really was wrapped up in baseball. And it really derailed me because when I went 0 for 4 with 3 punchies and I made an error or two, which I never hardly ever did as an infielder, I was a better infielder and hitter at the time. And all of a sudden now I was a worse player and what's my identity? I stunk at this game. Now who am I? So at the highest level, all the way down, I try to share perspective, meaning you get to do this today. And I know right now, for you guys who can't play baseball, I can't work, we can't do anything right now, we're all in the same boat. It reveals a lot of our character and sometimes the identity. There's a player I work with who right after this happened, he's like, I'm depressed. He texts me, I'm depressed. He's been in pro ball for a while. And he's like, I'm depressed. And I hate to say this, but I knew this day was going to come. I thought it was going to come in retirement. No one could expect what we're going on right now. But trying to pour into him and give him some perspective and help him gain some perspective. Like, you get to do this, man. Like, you got to wake up today. Like, you get to say you're a professional player. You get to say you're a high school player or a college player. Or for those seniors out there right now in high school or college, like, you got to do something that not a lot of people get to do. And like, who are you? Are you Kevin Wilson, the baseball player who happens to be a brother, sister, husband, father, whatever? Or are you Kevin Wilson, the person who gets to play baseball? And so that's what I try to bring perspective to guys and say, listen, look up. Sometimes I stay in a big league stadium, like, guys, look up. There's a third deck here. How many people get to play with a third deck, right? For example. And then sometimes it just kind of diffuses kind of like their tension. You can just see, like, all right, yeah, wow, man, this is my dream. So no matter at the highest level, as you know, Ken, or at the lowest level, or you're just starting out, as long as we keep our identity and who we are, we're a person first and a player second. I think it allows us to navigate a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's going to be really easy. I'll give you a signpost and kind of why you're doing what you're doing and kind of your identity just not wrapped up in the baseball, because once it gets taken away, like now, then what do we have left? So let's start off with that.
Yeah, it's definitely a good start. And I remember my brother having a pretty rough streak with the Padres at one point. His agent said the best thing for your career is maybe when you have a kid, because then all of a sudden, like, baseball, your batting average, like, that's not priority number one anymore. That's the fun part that you get to do in front of your family. Whereas when that, like you're saying, if that's your identity, it makes the pressure surmount like that much greater. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, excuse me. The thing about it was, I wish I had a kid when I played, because that's the distraction I needed. Like Corey was saying, it was like, it just separates on field from off field. Excuse me, I almost choked on my saliva, but it separates on field from the off field and allows you to, again, have that perspective of, like, my toddler doesn't even know I play baseball, as an example, right? Like, he or she doesn't care. My 5-year-old, no, well, he doesn't care if I go over. He just sees daddy, and that's awesome. So it's funny you brought that up, because that's something that, as I reflected on my career, I was like, man, I could have used not just a kid. We're talking about a kid. I could have used either somebody or something to separate on and off the field as I was going through. So I wasn't always consumed with baseball. That's all I was doing. That's all I thought about was baseball, and it crushed me.
Yeah, and that's like the kind of the tough part with this game, right? I think in order to be really good, you need to, be obsessed, to work really hard, to learn, but then you also need to be able to like let it go. I think that's why it's kind of such a frustrating and amazing sport at the same time.
Yeah, I think you also for those who are watching too and listening, I think it's also understanding like we need to work at our craft. We need to put in the hours to our craft. There's a young coach I mentor, because I also coach a lot of college and high school coaches throughout the year. And one of them was like, man, I just want to do what you're doing right now. And he's a 23-year-old, second year coach in college. He's like, man, I'm done with this college stuff. I just want to do what you do. I'm like, man, kind of like we alluded at the beginning, very when we first got on. I've been doing this 20 years, man. Like when I started lessons all the way through, 10 plus on the consulting side of things. I said, some people will say that's a 20-year overnight success. To your point about putting the time in. I don't think a lot of people are willing to put the time in, number one. But number two, it's like, listen, we need to work at it, but we also need to work smarter. It wasn't until later that I understood rest. Sleep, what's that? Like, I'm young, I can just get 3 hours of sleep and get sleep. I'm not Rob Abina here, but sleep is important. You know, um, nutrition, just having things in your life that you have, like boundaries. There are boundaries that I have. There are things that I don't engage with, and there's things I do engage with. Um, there are times, and again, I've learned over time, but not to worry with the things that really don't matter to me. And over time, you figure out what matters to you. So if you're working at home, if you're a young player and you're working, yeah, you should work at your craft, but work smart. You don't need 1,000 swings in the cage, especially if you're doing them wrong. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. What are you doing? Are you doing wrong? I don't know. I'm not watching you, but say if you're not doing the things that you need to be doing, well, that's 1,000 bad reps rather than if you got 100 good reps, that would trump your 1,000 bad reps. So, for me, it's working smarter, getting rest, just being consistent in your routine and what you do. That's a life lesson. Just being consistent in your routine. If you have a routine, my morning routine consists of I get up, I have this quiet time I have for me, get my coffee, and I read a lot in the morning. I have my routine in the morning, but I have, and now with homeschool with my son, he's 10. We have his homeschool schedule, and we're doing that. And then afternoon, after 12 o'clock, I've got time to do things like this. And I've poured into myself in the beginning of the day. I've served somebody in the morning, meaning my son right now. And then I get a chance to serve other people, hopefully, in things like this and what we're talking about in the afternoon. But then once 5, 6 o'clock comes, I'm done. And I have a boundary there. So I'm not doing Zoom calls at night, or I'm not doing this and that. Like, I think if we provide a schedule to ourselves and we're consistent with that, that's working smarter, where you get what you need to get in, and then you get out and go run around the neighborhood. I don't care, whatever you got to do. You want to play video games? Good, get out, play. A lot of my pro guys, they hang out in Fortnite all season. That's fine because it takes them away from the game, but they have a scheduled routine. They get their work done during the day, of course, and then they find another escape from baseball.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I mean, I remember being a young college coach and, putting 70 hours in a week and bragging about it. Like, oh, I'm doing great. I'm working 70 hours a week. And looking back on it, the same could have been accomplished with 50 hours. So I think, especially now with the amount of free time we have, it's easy to confuse quantity over quality. And since you brought it up, we have some young guys listening, guys with a lot of time. What type of routine would you recommend for guys who are stuck at home right now as a hitter?
It all depends on kind of what you have access to, right?
For sure.
Um, I see some of these setups, man, and these people are, it's like the Disneyland of baseball. They got cages in their backyard and
Yeah.
nicer than any minor league cage. It's pretty impressive. But I simply put, do something, like be creative, figure it out. If it means you play wiffle ball with your parents or your siblings or whatever, play some wiffle ball, toss the ball up in the air and hit it and Go get it and bring it back, like kind of like a dog. Like go play fetch with yourself. Things that we did as a kid in my generation that we just did every day. Hit off the tee if you can. Hit socks. Do dry swings. One thing that I love to do as a kid, and I think today with a lot of downtime, we're able to do this. Hop on YouTube, pull up a game. It could be any game. It could be a Phillies game. Put the 2008 World Series on if you want. Stand, get your bat. Just check with mom or dad or whoever you're living with. Make sure you're not swinging and knocking over lamps. But get your bat, stand in, swing at strikes, and take balls. Meaning the game's on your computer, or your phone, your TV, whatever it is, stand in there in the box. And you can get 100 at bats in an hour off of different pitchers and situations and types and do that. I did that all the time as a kid, listen to Harry Cowles and turn on the TV and doing that. My mom used to yell at me all the time because she was afraid I was going to knock over a lamp. But that's how you can help with your timing and pitch recognition too. So do some of that if you want. And I said, just there's so many things you can do, but you don't have to do anything fancy. You can do your swing work off a tee, some wiffle ball stuff for competing, and then getting in as well as some of that YouTube stuff, games just to be able to help with the timing and the pitch recognition. Again, helping with your approach and your tunneling, and again, swing at strikes. Sorry, and take balls that way too. So a couple things that come to mind first.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice, and I think it's really interesting because you hear so much that young, athletes for whatever reason don't watch a lot of baseball, and they're also not doing things like out in the backyard. Everything needs to be organized and structured. So this is almost like a throwback to when people like you and me were kids, and like you said, if you didn't have anyone to play catch with or hit with, like you throw it up in the air and you hit it. But I
Yeah.
know you're a big tee guy. Tanner tees obviously. What, yeah, what do you recommend, like any particular tee routine? Because I think that's probably like one tool a lot of these people have at home. I know you're a big tee
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, the routine and me is, again, I'm flexible within what everybody's doing, but I think you're allowed, let me put it this way, you're allowed to put a ball on the tee down the middle and just groove your swing and just working on your swing. But I also recommend move it around a little bit, raise it up, put it high and away, put it down and in, or down and away, low and away. Move it around because I think a couple things will happen. Number one is you will learn what you can and can't hit, meaning where does your natural swing play the best within the zone. So if you put the ball on the tee right down the middle and you crush that up the middle and it's an effortless swing, no added effort to it, it's 60% maybe effort wise, and it's right into the net, or the back of the cage, wherever you're at, and you do that, then okay, your swing naturally plays there. But if we put it high and away and you have to reach for it, you have to manipulate your swing to try to gain a result to hit it, well, then that's a boundary. Like your swing doesn't play. Rather, it's down the way, low and in, up and in. Move it around the quadrants of the strike zone and trial and error. Swing at it and see what you can and can't hit and where that swing plays the most natural. Because you're going to teach yourself mechanics through feel with that. It's going to feel good and it's not going to feel good. It's going to feel smooth and it's going to feel manipulated. It's going to feel like there's an effort to it. So I would, the simple thing with the routine or tee, just put it everywhere and figure out what you can and can't hit in terms of effort level. The other thing, last thing I'll say to that too, is make sure that you're looking out at the pitcher. Instead of down the tee, look out to the pitcher. Imagine the pitch coming in, boom, and then go and hit. Imagery is a huge thing that I've seen it for all these years that not a lot of guys go to. They literally just put the ball on the tee and they hit here. I was guilty when I was younger. I did the same thing. So we never look down at the plate in a game. So we're putting the ball on the tee, we look down here and then we swing. All of a sudden the game comes and we go like this. So in essence, you're practicing two different swings. In terms of here on the tee and then here in the game. Imagine any lefty, righty pitcher. You can imagine sliders. You can imagine breaking balls, change-ups. Use your imagination and go ahead and practice it. Put the tee, like right before games, I used to take 5 to 7 swings in the cage or right behind the dugout, depending on where we were playing at. Now I put the tee up and whatever the out pitch of that pitcher that was starting that night, Now I know everybody doesn't have access to all this, but just simply put, could be like, man, the last time I faced this cat, threw me a change up so low and away, and I know he's going to throw it to me with 2 strikes. So if I get the 2 strikes, I want to visualize me hitting the ball, line drive, opposite field, where whatever side of the plate you're on. So for example, I put, okay, this guy's change up guy, sinker away. I'm going to put low and away, and I'm going to go 5-7 swings like I'm in the box that night. Okay, 2 strikes, and visualize that ball coming there and boom, hitting it right where I wanted to hit it. So the visualization part of it is huge in order to help you with the in-game stuff, especially while we're home on the tee.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And you mentioned visualization a few times. You're one of the first people I ever heard talk about that. I think it's something that's not practiced really at all until guys, become like serious college or serious professional players and realize they need that extra edge. For guys who haven't visualized or done visualization before, how would you recommend them getting into it?
Yeah, I think it's just let's go back to that YouTube thing. A real quick, easy, simple way when we're home right now is imagine, try to get a YouTube feed, a video. And again, searching, my son's way better at searching. He searches half my stuff for me because I don't even know how to use a search thing. But get a behind the plate view. Now, there's some videos out there that'll have a pitch coming. It could be the Doc Gooden video I see out there all the time. Anywhere where there's a pitch coming in and the camera view is from behind the catcher. Just so you imagine, you can see and replay in your mind, kind of, okay, that's what it looked like. And then go back to any of maybe it's the pitcher that you crush all the time, your best friend down the block or whatever. And so you can say, okay, that's what it looks like. Because when we're on the tee and when we look out, that's the picture I want you to think in your mind of a guy elevated on a mound up there. You've seen hundreds of pictures, even if you're younger. You've seen him before, and imagine that right there. Imagine him going through his windup. Maybe he's in the stretch. Maybe he changes arm angles. Whatever it is, we all imagine. It's daydreaming. We imagine. We do it all the time. But if we apply that to this, now you're getting mental at bats. I equate it to this: downhill skiers. If anybody's ever watched the Olympics and downhill skiing, what is he or she doing up there? They're going through the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Like they're going through the course in their mind. They know every inch of that course. Luge or the bobsled or whatever it is, like the bobsled, the driver, what is he or she doing? She knows every inch of it. She's going through in her mind. If we take all those mental reps off a pitcher, and when we get back to playing here, and we'll get back to playing this year at some point, whenever that is, you can take so many mental reps from that. The guys in the big leagues, as you know, the guys in the big leagues, they got their iPads and they got their TVs and they've got the angles and they've got all that. And they go through, a lot of them, they'll go through those imagery sessions, just seeing the pitch again, seeing the pitch. Because if we go bring it down at the lowest level, if we see that fastball, for example, in high school, I saw 85 for the first time. That was like the hardest anybody threw, except for like Ben Davis at Malvern. But like, it was like 85 at the time was hard. Whew, first time I saw it was like, first time I saw 90 in college, 95 in college, 98, 100 in college, I was seeing. First time you see it, you get your doors blown off. But you see it enough, then all of a sudden now you're on it. So same thing with visualization. We see it enough, we keep imagining it, watch it on the TV, all that, then it keeps us, and then it's not a velocity. It's not a tough pitch. It's just like, all right, I've seen enough. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like, and I can compete against it now.
I think that's awesome. So people are probably thinking right now, like, is this crucial? Is this something I don't really need to worry about? Where do you think this falls in with a hitter? Like, do you think this is something that every guy needs to do? Do you think this is more person specific? How useful a tool do you think this is?
I think it's important, but it always goes down to like, if it works for you, keep it. If it
Yeah.
doesn't, toss it. I'm definitely, you know me, I'm definitely not a cookie cutter person. I'm very individualistic. We talked about earlier. I want to meet you where you're at as a player and build out from there. Stand on top of your head, hit line drives. Got to teach me how to do that. I've never seen anybody do that, but if it works for you, we're going to start from there. That'll be your foundation. So if you're out there and you're using imagery, and you're using like detailed imagery and it works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I guess the foundation, the non-negotiable for me, I guess, in that is just look up. Even if you're not want to imagine a picture thrown to you, stand up, look out. So at least your posture is the same as is in the game. So if it works for you, keep it with the detailed stuff. If not, just look out there because it'll just help you build and work on that one swing, not two.
Love it. Love it. So we have a question here that I think kind of fits with the conversation. One of our sophomores is wondering what kind of mindset should a hitter have in the box?
Whew, that's a great
Another
question.
long one. Yeah.
No, it's a great question because I always talk about hitting as a conversation. And that's what we're doing right now. I think not enough hitters converse. There's a lot of video out there. There's a lot of, hey, absolute things, and you have to do this. And there's not a lot of this conversation that you and I are having today. I think that's where you find the answers to that. So as an approach or a mindset at the plate, it really boils down to what do you hit the best in terms of pitch type. Most of us hit a fastball really well because that's all we see, or most of what we see in practice, batting practice, machine, um, that kind of stuff. So you don't become a good high school hitter. I'm talking about sophomore in high school. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, sophomore in high school.
Okay. You don't become a good a good sophomore in high school. You don't become a good high school baseball player unless you can hit the fastball. You don't have a chance to get to college baseball if you can't prove to people you can hit a good fastball, a good one, right? And on top of that is you can't get to the big leagues unless you square up a fastball. And it's the old saying, how do you hit a breaking ball? Don't miss the fastball. How do you hit a changeup? Don't miss the fastball. So a lot of that is what we're doing is we're giving ourselves an opportunity. Okay, what are we working on? What do we master? What pitch do we hit the best? Most of us is a fastball, especially early on. We're trying to master that. Number two is where on the plate, mindset wise, do you need this ball with less than two strikes? We can't cover the entire plate. We can't. There's a lot we get power coached, I feel, at a young age to say we got to hit everything because we're Johnny 8-year-old and the ball's 5 balls out because we got to get the game moving in Little League. And he was like, swing the bat. Well, I mean, John needs an extension on his bat just to get over there because little Johnny's 4'2" and the ball is like twice the size over there. But I think on the plate, we got to figure out what part of the plate we can cover with our natural swing. We talked about it a little bit before. Simply put, let's do this. If here's the plate right here, what I like to do is I like to put 7 baseballs down. Do you guys got there?
Yep.
Okay. So you got may or may not be, whoever's asking this question may or may not be familiar with this, but for those who are not, I place 7 baseballs down on the ground, 1 being the inside corner. Let's just say this is the inside corner. 4 will be your middle, 7 will be your outside. And there's balls all down here. The simple drill I do is to find out where your swing plays the best is I want you to swing at everything. So in this case, I'm going to throw to you, I want you to swing at everything. And whatever ball that you make contact over. So you're swinging, and if the plate's here, over what ball do you make contact with? So if you think it's a 4 and it's a 7, I'll help you. You'll be like, 4. I'm like, no, it's actually a 7. And then we'll kind of work after a while, 20 pitches or so, 10, 20 pitches, and you'll come up with your zone. When we're done figuring out where you're at, I'll tell you, okay, I'll ask you rather, I'll ask you, over which 4 balls does your swing play the most natural? And when I say over what 4 balls, it's basically like a third of a plate, wherever that is, it'll be a third of the plate. So you're basically leaving a very small, or 3/4 of the plate. You're leaving a third to the pitcher, 3/4 will be yours. So I think that there's a good start. What pitch do you hit the best and where on the plate do you hit it the most natural? And with less than 2 strikes at that level, especially like the high school level, you're going to get your pitch. You're going to either get walked or you're going to get your pitch. And if you're mastering in practice where that tunnel is, I call it a tunnel. If you master that tunnel and you don't miss hit, because that's the other thing. I see high school players, I see young players, I see even young pros that'll miss hit flips in a cage or chair BP. I'm like, dude, if you miss hit flips, you have no shot in the game. So if we have this tunnel, then we're mastering being on time to hit a ball to center field in our tunnel. and it's 3/4 of the plate, that's a really good place to start, because it goes back to, with less than 2 strikes, just because it's a strike doesn't mean you have to swing at it. He's going to throw you a sinker low and away on strike one. Like, what am I going to do with that? Right? I had Kevin Youkilis, a college teammate of mine, on a show I had yesterday. We were talking exactly about that, but I talk to my players as well, and um, it's, but that's from experience. It's like I used to swing at everything, and I'm like, oh man, like I wasted that first pitch of that at bat. Man, I can get a better one. So if you are mastering the fastball, in summary, and you find out what your tunnel is, and you only in practice hit out of that tunnel to master that, in a game when it's 2-0, 3-1, 0-0, and that ball comes in your tunnel, you don't freak out and your eyes don't get big and like, oh, I got to crush this. That's all you've been working on. So it's not wasting time on your weaknesses. We got to recognize what our weaknesses is, and we got to work on those a little bit. We're not going to waste time on it. We're going to take a majority of our time to build our strengths. And that's an example of how you can master your strength in your zone. And maybe that's where the jumping off point for you could be, in terms of what your approach, what you want it to be, or at least gives you, again, a foundation to kind of build off it and make changes, be flexible as you grow older, because it's going to change a little bit as you grow.
For sure. And I don't know if you would agree to this, but I found a lot of hitters don't actually understand what pitches they hit well and they don't. So I think the 7 ball drill is a great thing these guys can do, whether it's on the tee, like you said, wiffle ball, whatever, in this time where we're not actually playing games, to understand what they do well more. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard guys say they crush the inside pitch, when what that pitch actually is a pitch right down the middle. So I think, like you said, just getting a better understanding of the plate in general, and then also how their swing plays in different areas of the plate, is something they can do right now, and it's really going to help their careers for sure.
Yeah, and pay attention to where you stand. If you're the hitter, pay attention to where you stand on the plate. Anthony Rizzo, for example, stands right on the dish. His 4 ball is actually the 7 ball. So this also helps you with the game plate, and also like Riz's, your plate. So the 4 on the plate, the game's plate, is his 1, and the 7 of the game's plate is his 4, and his 7's on the right-handed batter's box. So it's also understanding where you stand as you're going through that. I wanted to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And manipulating where you stand in the box, basically, to move your sweet spot into the plate a little bit more. That just comes from trial and error, right?
Yeah, and I don't see a lot of young guys move in the box. And even in big leagues, they don't move. It's like, I used to move depending on the pitch speed and where I thought what was coming and where it was going, based upon my experience. And I used to keep a little journal, hitting journal. A lot of guys I work with keep a hitting journal, and they document the pitches and at bats, and they create their own narratives through it. But I used to move, like, for example, if it was 2-1 count and I knew a guy was throwing a breaking ball, I'd scoot up on the dish so that I could get that breaking ball elevated. And to get that breaking ball elevated, now I got a chance to be able to drive it up the middle that way. Rather than if I was back, that's probably I'm out front just a tick on a plus count, and I roll over once again, and no one likes running hard 90s. So,
Oh, definitely. That's where I think players can get more tactical in their approach, and really like soak up the game, and not just, like you're saying, kind of do the same thing, stay in the same spot for every single pitcher.
yeah, and pay attention in the game. The thing in the big leagues last, I don't know how many years it's been, but people are always going in the video room. It may change now because of the Astros thing, but like, and I kind of hope it does, in terms of, there are very few guys on the bench watching the game, even at the big league level anymore. And I'll ask a guy, like, hey, what'd you see with this pitcher when, the first couple innings, he didn't have this pitch, or, he didn't even throw that pitch. Did you notice, like, in the third, he started using it again, only against lefty hitters or whatever it was? No, I got to go look at it again. You shouldn't have to go look at it again. It should be, you should be able to pay attention to that stuff. And I think a lot of people are so, they're getting lazy, and I don't blame them for this part of it, because it is pretty readily available. You can get on your iPad, you can, up there especially, they can just pop up the video right there for you with the guys that are working back there. And it's really kind of easy and kind of lazy. You're just like, oh yeah, let me just take a look at it again. Watch it the first time around. Guys in high school, college, watch it. Watch the game. You can learn a lot by observing. And it doesn't mean that you have to stay locked in for 3 hours a night. That's just not going to happen for any of us. But pick and choose and get on the top rail. Get on the top rail and can try to figure out how to navigate the offense and talk to each other. And those who do it are usually the better offensive players, and teams that do it are usually the better offensive teams.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing I noticed, kind of like you're saying, is sitting and watching a baseball game and trying to guess what pitch is coming. As childish as it might sound, it might be the best way to learn an approach and learn the game, because all of a sudden you're paying attention to more than just the pitcher. You're paying attention to the catcher. You're paying attention to the pitching coach. What kind of tell does he have? And especially with the younger guys, the tells are very obvious if you're looking at the right things.
Yeah, I think it's. I'll give you an example. It's like um, game on the line, ninth inning, man on first, 2 outs. You're the home team. Visitors are up by one. They bring their closer in and throws 100. Is that closer going to throw a first pitch changeup to you in that where all he needs is one more out and the game's over? And he throws 100. Um, so as a hitter, it's again paying attention and having common sense is like, hey, listen, he throws 100. I'm going to be on time to hit this 100-mile-an-hour ball. Wherever you have to listen, facing 100 before, it doesn't. I can't go up the middle with that. I got to try to think about getting the head out and pulling it way foul in order to maybe get it fair in left field somewhere, or right field, or wherever. But I know that's what he's throwing. And if he does throw a changeup and I swing over top of it, I'm 10 feet, missing it by 10 feet, I tip my cap because that's probably not going to happen. Even it's 0-1. I'm still got plenty of at bat left. So I think it's just, again, the common sense part from observing. It's like a dude comes in, throws 100, he's going to go to his strength as a pitcher, if he knows what he's doing. And then you as a hitter, you got to just recognize that and be ready for that and see what happens, the outcome of that. But at least you have some common sense, and there's your approach coming up because you just observed and watched and you paid attention, simply put, like you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to switch gears. I have one more question, then we'll answer some of these questions on the chat. So one thing that you've said before that I thought was really interesting, and it might sound like it applies to coaches, which obviously it does. I think it really applies to players too, really at all levels. Your quote is, "You hire me to fire me." Can you give me some background on that, and then I'll jump in about why players should be paying attention to this quote too, or maybe you'll cover it.
Yeah, it's you hire me to fire me. Ken, if you hire me today, I hope you fire me a year from now, 5 years from now, because simply put, that means that you've taken ownership of your career, you've taken ownership of your swing, taken ownership of your approach, and then you can be your best hitting coach. And I'm just the assistant hitting coach for anybody. It's your career. You're the main guy. You're the head guy. And for me, it's like if I do my job, and again, going back to, and I say it all the time, it's a horrible marketing plan for any business out there. It's like, hey, you hire me, but I want you to fire me pretty shortly after this. But again, the why of what I do is I want to help people, and I want you to accomplish all that you set out to do. And at the end of the day, I want to give you the keys to your brand new car. I'm like a car salesman at the shop. I can test drive it with you. I can show you all the gadgets, and I can tell you like, hey, performance is this and that, and I can negotiate with you on the price. I can negotiate you with on your swing and your approach, and I can help you through that to find a solution to your problems. But eventually, I want to get you off the car lot. I want to give you the keys and let you go home and own that car for the next 5, 10 years. And it's yours, and you can brag to your friends. You know exactly how to put the key in the ignition. You know how it performs. You know all the gadgets. So that's what it is. You hire me to fire me because I've given you the keys to your own car, and I've allowed you to take ownership of it, know why you do everything you do, have a purpose for what you do, and you can fix on your own the problems that you have, whether it's mid pitch, mid at bat, mid season, mid career, and you are the best hitting coach that you'll ever have. Not me, you. And if I can help you become your best hitting coach, that's why I'm hoping that you fire me one day. I hope we still stay friends. That's the whole point of that. But I don't want you to have to pay me any longer than you think you need to pay me.
Right, be reliant on you, and it's that's so impactful to me because we've talked to a bunch of different people, from professional players to college coaches, Division 1, 2, 3, to yourself, whose literally job is to coach hitters, and they've all said, in order to you reach your ceiling, reach your potential, you need to take ownership of your own career. The coach is not going to make or break your career. You're going to. And I think coming from you, since it's literally like that's how you have this house behind you, it means even more. And that's one thing I really wish players would take more seriously is just owning their career, owning their swing, using resources like yourself, but not being completely reliant on it. I'm sure you spend a few hours a week with guys. You want them to spend a lot more time, with themselves or, with a buddy working on the things you talk about, and not just only getting work when they're with Kevin.
Exactly. That's one of the best things for me is like, and it sounds crazy, but again, I do this to build relationships with guys. I want to have a lifelong relationship with you, and a shorter baseball relationship with you. And one of the best things ever is when we're done working together in that capacity that, we're at weddings, we're over their houses, we're visiting them, they're visiting us. When they come in town and they're done playing, and we hang out, we FaceTime, and especially during this time, we're always texting and FaceTime and joking. And that's what I do it for, is so that, for example, my son's grown up around the big leagues and I never got a chance to do that, but these are his friends. And that's where I want that relationship to be, where I want the people that I'm working with, that I'm comfortable for them to be around my 10-year-old. And so that they can pour into him and he can see that their work ethic and the way they treat people, the way they treat their families, so that as he's growing up, that he's not in awe of big leaguers like I was, that he says, okay, these are regular people that go through a lot of stuff, as we were alluding to earlier. But at the end of the day, they're human beings and they're regular people like me. They just got to do what they're doing, what they got to do. But now they're going on their second career. There's guys I work with played 10 years in the big leagues. Now they're in dental school. Now they've got their own businesses. I mean, there's this whole other life that sometimes we don't think about, like after baseball, because we have our goal to play at the highest level, whatever that is for you, college, high school, the pros. It's all going to be done. And I want to be, when it's all done for you, I want to be able to continue that relationship, because that means more to me than any cage session we had. But that session we had in the cage, to me, was still special. But I know that was a planting of seeds of sorts in order for us to have that lifelong relationship when it's all said and done.
Yeah, like even though we're talking about baseball, we're not really talking about baseball. That's I think why baseball is the best sport out there, because there's so much that we learn from the game that can be applied after we're done playing. And if you're lucky, like you're saying, you're applying those lessons with guys you care about because you work with them, you played with them, you coach them, whatever.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I just referenced my college teammate, Kevin Euclid. I mean, he played
Yeah,
for a long time and two-time World Series champ, I think, and a couple-time All-Star. I mean, he played, over 10 years professionally. Um, he's 41 and he's got his own brewing company and coffee
I
company.
saw
And
that.
like, there's a whole nother life to live.
Yeah,
And the brother would be the same way. And all that have played, whether they stopped at high school or college or somewhere in the pros. I think coaches, I'll wrap this up with this, Ken, because this is the part I could talk about all day, is I think if we're doing our job right, I think that if our purpose is to coach the person first, like we said before, in order to have the player come up second in the game, if they know that you care about them as a player, then they'll be open to your teachings and what you say. It's the old saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I care about you as a person first, player second. I care about you and your well-being first, and I care about building a relationship and trust with you, because the teacher rather, doesn't appear until the student is ready. So for me, the teacher, to be appearing to this player I'm working with, I have to spend a lot of time building a trust and relationship with them, so that they will in turn open the door for me to become a student now to my teachings.
that actually, I'm gonna be greedy and ask one more question, because that actually brought up something that I was thinking about. So with travel baseball, especially, typically the team's built of 12 players or so and two coaches, and they don't have a year to get to know each other. From a coaching standpoint, what would you do to help develop those relationships under those restrictions?
We were talking about before we went on. I was fortunate to be the hitting coach for the 18U national team for Team
Right.
USA back in 2013, and we won a gold
Gold
medal.
medal winner.
Gold medal. I have a gold medal because of 20 great kids. Really nothing that I did. I mean, they just let me sneak on the plane and I went over with them. A lot of those guys are in the big leagues right now, Jack Flaherty being one of them with the Cardinals. But um, I always say, and you've heard me say this a lot, all it takes is 5 minutes to change someone's life. All it takes is 5 minutes to change someone's life. We all have a lot of 5 minutes in our days to impact people in a positive way. So in your setting, much like our USA setting, I had 2 weeks to get to know guys. 2 weeks. Best of the best in the world. They didn't know who I was, and I kind of hardly knew who they were until the summer, like that couple weeks prior. And so for me to gain that trust we were talking about earlier, I wanted to spend 5 minutes walking from, the bus to the complex. We had a 16-hour plane ride to Taipei, Taiwan. I'd try to take as much of that time to be able to connect with guys along the way, get to know them as a person. Where are they from? Are they from Hollywood? Are they from the middle of, I don't know, Idaho, wherever they're from? I wanted to get to know kind of their origin story, so I knew how to approach them. And so through that, I was trying to take advantage of those 5 minutes. Today, where we're at right now, it could be a text message. It could be just it could be a Zoom. It could be an email. It could be a phone call. It could be maybe you tag them on social media. You got to learn how your players, where they reside at. There's sometimes I communicate through social media to some guys to encourage them. Sometimes it's a text message. Sometimes a FaceTime. Sometimes it's a video call like this, like a Zoom. I think in those 5 minutes, if we take advantage of those 5 minutes, we can connect much faster with guys, and we don't need a year. We may only need 2 weeks, like I did with USA. And again, out of those 20, there were 15 of them that were hitters, two-way players, only 5 pitcher onlys. So for me, I was in charge of 15 out of the 20, right? So pitching coach had a much harder job because all 20 of them were pitching, but at some point, but for me, it was 15 in 2 weeks, and I was able to do that because I was intentional about my 5 minutes every day. And sometimes I was in the waiting room, the hotel, like I said, on the plane. I was texting them while they were in their rooms over there, whatever it is I could to take advantage of that.
No, I think that's awesome. And I think as coaches, we sometimes forget what kind of power we have. Like, I think we can all trace back to a coach saying something that coach might not even have thought was that important in the moment, but it really impacted our lives. So I think that's great advice, and just a reminder that, we have a lot of influence, either good or bad, depending on how we take advantage of it, with the guys that we get to work with.
I'll give you one example of that for me. And I only say this because it's really, I think it pairs with what we're talking about. Back in, can't remember what year it was, 2010 maybe. My son was really young. Jeff Bannister, who was bench coach for the Pirates. He was the Pirates for a long time. He got to the big leagues for the Pirates as a catcher back in the day. He got one at bat, got one major league hit. He did the what's that guy in Major League? He did the Jake Taylor. He was running like slow motion catcher, and he barely beat it out, and he was safe. And that was his only at bat in the big leagues. Anyway, he was a manager of the year in 2015, I think, with the Rangers when he went to the playoffs. But Banny, I remember in 2010, they were in Philadelphia. Pittsburgh was in Philadelphia. And I was working with a guy on the team, and a lot of those guys are Pirate guys that I had known from when I was playing. And so Banny comes over. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "It's rough." Text him, "Willie, what's going on, Willie?" I said, "Banny, man, this is what I'm trying to do right now." And he stuck his finger right in my chest because I still had doubts as could I really work with big league guys the way that I wanted to. He stuck his finger in my chest, and I'll never forget. Citizens Bank Park was there for BP on the field, and he goes, "You can do it because I absolutely believe in you. You absolutely can help these guys at this level. Now you just got to go and do it." And for me, it was very simple. Probably not motivating to a lot of people, but just the whole thing you're talking about, 5 minutes. It was less than a 5-minute conversation. By him doing that, he gave me the confidence to go do it. And if it crashed and burned, it crashed and burned. But he gave me that confidence to go off and say, I can do this. And here we are in 10 years later, 2020, still doing it, thankfully.
Yeah, I appreciate sharing that. I like the accent too. That was dead on. Heard a couple interviews with him. That was really cool though. So why don't we get to one or two of these questions, then we'll let you go. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Awesome. So one thing that seems to be a reoccurring theme with a lot of these is, again, guys really caring. They wouldn't be listening to something like this if they didn't really care about baseball. I think sometimes that kind of it gets them to be nervous on the field because they care so much. So do you have any recommendations on how guys can slow the game down, in the box, on the field, on the mound?
Simply put, it's the phrase care but don't care. You care enough to be dangerous. I will kind of unpack that a little bit and say that it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier in terms of perspective. Like, why do you play this game? Do you play this game? Is your identity wrapped up in if you go 4 for 4, you're the best, no for 4, you're the worst guy? If you don't get the big hit, or you don't make the pitch, or you don't get the ball and defense, and you're going to, people are going to all think that you are the worst player, or you should have got it. Sometimes I'll tell the pro guys, like, listen, especially in the minors, no one's paying attention. No one's paying attention in the minor leagues. No one's paying attention to the 10-year-old travel ball. No disrespect to that or the minor league guys or even the big league guys. You're playing at some of these major league stadiums and there might be 5,000 people there. No one's paying attention. Trust me. But we think that all eyes are on us, and everybody's scrutinizing over every little thing because that's what they see in social media. LeBron eats the wrong thing for breakfast and Twitter blows up. Things like that. That's what they're used to seeing. So if you care but don't care, that means that you have perspective in terms of, why am I doing this? I want to do this because I actually have fun playing the game. I like being around my buddies. I like whatever it is your purpose of playing, and keeping the main thing, meaning, like, if baseball's taken away from me tomorrow, can I rest my head on the pillow knowing that I played for the right reasons today? In that, yes, no one's paying attention to me, and that in the grand scheme of life, and this is the one thing that I failed at doing, Ken, in my career, is I was playing for happiness. Again, identity wrapped up in baseball. Good game, felt great. Bad game, felt terrible. I was never in the middle. But with that is, okay, if you're playing for happiness based upon your results, you're never going to find joy in playing the game. And joy comes from that pure place in your heart, in your soul, wherever it is, that you're playing for the reasons of, because you actually are playing the game for the very first reason that you started playing in the first place. And hopefully it wasn't because someone strapped cleats on your shoes, on your feet, and chucked you out there. But hopefully you came back the next day because it was actually fun. So care but don't care, because now your identity is not wrapped up in a baseball player. It's what you get to do. And then you're reminding yourself of why you started to play this game. And that allows you to have that joy in playing the game for that small window period that you got, that we talked about before.
Yeah, it's what you get to do. That's the best way to look at it.
Yeah,
for sure. So we got one more, and this might go hand in hand with the last question. But again, it's something that I see really affect younger players, and obviously it affects the pro guys too. So guys that are getting moved around in the lineup a lot, they might be hitting 2, they have a bad couple games, and all of a sudden they find themselves at 7 or 8 in the lineup. Or you're a guy who's starting every Friday, and you end up, getting taken out of that spot, and you're a midweek guy out of the bullpen. What kind of advice would you have to those guys to stay positive?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it touches on a lot of, I think we've all experienced that for the most part at some point in our career. I mean, the pro way of saying that is, you don't like it, play better. But there's a lot of truth in that. But it doesn't always work out that way. It doesn't always work out. If you are playing better than everybody else, doesn't mean that you're going to bat third every time, and you might find yourself on the bench. But I think, for me, I used to, personally, I used to get really, again, it went back to the identity thing. I used to really worry about what the manager thought of me. And it was a personality thing for me too. It was a personal thing. I always used to really be concerned with what people thought about me when I was younger, especially. So if a manager, there was only 2 spots, Ken, where you would see my name. It was 9th, where I was the first off the bench, and I'm in the middle of the lineup card because I'm a switch hitter. I'm not left or right. So I really didn't have to look too far. So especially, once I got the pro ball. But for me, it was like if I was in the 9 hole, I mean, literally, it was like not even like, it was like a centimeter. My mood changed when I was 9 to when I was on the bench, as a switch hitter. And usually I was like the first one off, but still, I'm not starting. Um, because I was like, well, does he not trust me? Does he not like me? Like I went into like a teenage whole rage scenes. Like, I don't know if they like me, or they like me, or they don't like me. And that was really derailing in a lot of senses, because if I was in there, my routine would change. Meaning, like I would go on the game day routine like normal, locked in, man. I was a happier guy around the clubhouse, and I was like, yeah, because high school I played every day, every game. Most of college I played almost every game. I didn't start about half my freshman year, and then after that, I played every game. But then, like, if I was in the lineup, did my routine, did my weight room, went to the training room, checked all the boxes. When I was here on the bench, I had an extra cup of coffee, didn't go to the cage maybe, or went late. We didn't go to the training room, skip. I don't feel like lifting today. I'm not going to play. Right? Immaturity, not the professional way to go about things. Certainly learned a lesson and changed things up. So I think the first thing I want to touch upon that, Ken, is your routine, your approach stays the same every single day. It's easy to do your routine, and it's also easy not to do your routine based upon where you're at in the lineup. If you're at first out of the pen, last out of the pen, if you're starting, you got demoted, whatever. But if you are truly a professional, and you don't have to play professional baseball to be professional about this, it's just a life lesson. Show up every day and do what you need to do. Do your work. Do what's expected of you. If you got to show up at 1 o'clock, show up at 1 o'clock. If you got to get in with Rob and do your weight stuff or stretching, just don't dilly dally. Oh man, it's the off season or it's beginning and I don't have to. No, if it's important to you, do it. The second piece of that is, if you're coming to the ballpark with the same routine and mentality every day, just because you start doesn't mean that they're not going to put you in the middle of the game sometime. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get to start the next day. Because what I learned the hard way too, and a lot of guys learned, is if I take today off and all of a sudden he throws me into tomorrow's game, Sunday day game at 1 o'clock, because no one else wants to play that game, then I'm not prepared. And I've missed the opportunity that was given to me. And it may only be one opportunity that week, maybe 3 that week, maybe 5. Either way, because how I treated yesterday is going to affect how I do today. And how I treat today is going to affect how I am tomorrow. So for me, it's no matter where you're at in the lineup, the mentality is the same. It's hard. It's going to be very hard. It's going to be very difficult. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. Because you have that mindset of you go in and get your work done every single day, the same way, whether you're in the starting lineup or you're right where you're supposed to be, or you think you should be, or you're not where you're supposed to be. Do your work, show up, and be professional about it. Because over time, you'll be prepared when they do throw you in to be able to take advantage of opportunities that are presented to you. And maybe they're not as many as you want, but you're prepared.
Yeah, no, that's dead on. That's really what I saw at the college level too. You're only playing 9, 10, 11 guys, and there's 30, 40 some on the roster. The guys who handled sitting, I don't want to say well, because they shouldn't be happy about it, but like you said, took care of business, continued to get better. They're the ones that found their name in the lineup, whether it be once a week, coming off the bench, and all of a sudden they do well, and it's twice a week. It's coming off the bench multiple times, and they just earn more and more time. So I think that's awesome. That's really helpful for these guys to hear. But that's all we have over here, KW. So I appreciate your time. Thanks as always.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you so much for all who joined. It's flattering, to be on here with you and everyone, and hopefully I was able to shine some light on some things, give you some ideas to, kind of why and how to go about your business. And again, I can't teach you anything, but I can make you think in order to learn. And hopefully we were able to do that, Ken, today, to make them think a little bit more about why they're doing what they're doing and what they can do going forward.
For sure. Great perspective as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.